And now we take great pleasure in presenting to you the star of our program, Miss Kate Smith.
Hello, everybody. It is my happy privilege to introduce a new song, God Bless America. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountain to the prairie to the ocean white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her.
25 Signs that the Nazification of America is almost complete. February 16, 2012 by Michael Snyder. BlacklistedNews.com. The United States of America is becoming more like Nazi Germany every single day. In fact, the Nazification of America is almost complete. The parallels between Nazi Germany and the United States of today are going to absolutely shock many of you. Most Americans simply have never learned what life was really like back in Nazi Germany. Under Adolf Hitler, Germany was a big brother totalitarian police state that ruthlessly repressed freedom and individual liberty. Under Adolf Hitler, Germany adopted socialism, dramatically increased government spending and raised taxes to astronomical levels. Under Adolf Hitler, abortion became legal in Germany, the government took over healthcare, and Christianity was pushed out of the public schools and out of public life. To prove all of these points, I am going to use extensive quotes from two sources. Kitty Werthmann was a child living a peaceful life in Austria when Hitler took over her nation. Her eyewitness accounts about what life was like under Nazi Germany are invaluable. In addition, I will also be quoting extensively from author Bruce Walker. He is the author of a book entitled He Swastika Against the Cross, The Nazi War on Christianity, and during his years of research he has uncovered some absolutely jaw-dropping stuff. After reading the information in the rest of this article, there should be no doubt that the United States is becoming just like Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany shows us what happens when the state becomes God. Adolf Hitler was certainly more racist than the leaders of America are today, but other than that there are very few differences between the road that Adolf Hitler led Germany down and the path that the United States is being led down. The following are 25 signs that the Nazification of America is almost complete. Number 1. Nazi Germany was a totalitarian big brother police state that constantly monitored everything that German citizens did. Today, the bureaucrats that run things in the United States are also absolutely obsessed with constantly trying to monitor us. For example, there are now control freaks that inspect the lunches of preschool students in certain areas of the country in order to make sure that they contain the right foods. A preschooler at West Hook Elementary School ate 3 chicken nuggets for lunch January 30th because the school told her the lunch her mother packed was not nutritious. The girl's turkey and cheese sandwich, banana, potato chips, and apple juice did not meet the United States Department of Agriculture guidelines, according to the interpretation of the person who was inspecting all lunch boxes in the More at 4 classroom that day. The Division of Child Development and Early Education at the Department of Health and Human Services requires all lunches served in pre-kindergarten programs including in-home daycare centers to meet USDA guidelines. That means lunches must consist of 1 serving of meat, 1 serving of milk, 1 serving of grain, and 2 servings of fruit or vegetables, even if the lunches are brought from home. Number 2. Nazi officials often used their position of power to force others to do dehumanizing things. This is exactly what the TSA is doing today. It would be really easy to imagine some Nazi military officers forcing a young woman to walk back and forth in front of them several times so that they could admire her form. Well, that is what TSA agents are doing to American women today. The following comes from a recent Wired article. TSA agents in Dallas singled out female passengers to undergo screening in a body scanner, according to complaints filed by several women who said they felt the screeners intentionally targeted them to view their bodies. One woman who flew out of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport several months ago said a female agent sent her through a body scanner 3 times after the agent commented on her cute body. Number 3. In Nazi Germany, even women and children were treated like dehumanized cattle. Well, today school children are being strip-searched all over the United States. Down in Georgia, one student was recently strip-searched by public school officials after another student falsely accused him of having marijuana. Another student down in Albuquerque was recently forced to strip down to his underwear while 5 adults watched because he had $200 in his pocket. The student was never formally charged with doing anything wrong. Number 4. In Nazi Germany, authorities could stop you and search you at any time and for any reason. In America that is not supposed to happen, but it is happening. Last year, TSA Viper teams conducted approximately 8,000 unannounced security screenings at subway stations, bus terminals, seaports and highway rest stops. If you are not able to produce your papers, there is a good chance that you will get thrown into prison in America. For example, a 21-year-old college student named Samantha Zucker was recently arrested and put in a New York City jail for 36 hours just because she could not produce any identification for police. Number 5. Under Adolf Hitler, there were massive increases in government spending. According to eyewitness Kitty Werthmann, just about everyone was getting some sort of a handout from the German government. Newlyweds immediately received a $1,000 loan from the government to establish a household. We had big programs for families. All daycare and education were free. High schools were taken over by the government and college tuition was subsidized. Everyone was entitled to free handouts, such as food stamps, clothing, and housing. Of course, as I have written about so many times before, this is the exact same thing that we are seeing in the United States today. Number 6. Under Hitler, taxes were raised dramatically in order to pay for all of these social programs. Kitty Werthmann says that our tax rates went up to 80% of our income. In the United States our tax rates have not gotten that bad yet, but when you total up all federal taxes, all state taxes, all local taxes, all property taxes and all sales taxes, there are a significant number of Americans that do pay more than 50% of their incomes in taxes. Number 7. The economy of Nazi Germany was very highly socialized. As Ludwig von Mises once correctly observed, the German economy under Hitler was not capitalist at all. What Mises identified was that private ownership of the means of production existed in name only under the Nazis and that the actual substance of ownership of the means of production resided in the German government. For it was the German government and not the nominal private owners that exercised all of the substantive powers of ownership. It, not the nominal private owners, decided what was to be produced, in what quantity, by what methods, and to whom it was to be distributed, as well as what prices would be charged and what wages would be paid, and what dividends or other income the nominal private owners would be permitted to receive. The position of the alleged private owners, Mises showed, was reduced essentially to that of government pensioners. The United States has not gotten to the level of Nazi Germany yet, but we do have a socialist president, and back in 2009 the cover of Newsweek boldly proclaimed that we are all socialists now. Number 8. In Nazi Germany, if you conducted business outside of the socialist paradigm you were heavily punished. Well, the same thing is happening in the United States today. For example, the FDA has been running elaborate entrapment schemes that are designed to entrap producers of raw milk. Any unauthorized commerce is dealt with very strictly by the United States government these days. Number 9. In Nazi Germany, government regulation of business got wildly out of control. The following is eyewitness testimony from Kitty Werthmann. My brother-in-law owned a restaurant that had square tables. Government officials told him he had to replace them with round tables because people might bump themselves on the corners. Then they said he had to have additional bathroom facilities. It was just a small dairy business with a snack bar. He could not meet all the demands. Soon, he went out of business. If the government owned the large businesses and not many small ones existed, it could be in control. We had consumer protection. We were told how to shop and what to buy. Free enterprise was essentially abolished. We had a planning agency specially designed for farmers. The agents would go to the farms, count the livestock, then tell the farmers what to produce, and how to produce it. Of course, we all know about all of the ridiculous regulations that the United States government is burdening businesses with today. In every day and age, control freaks love to stick it to business people that are just trying to make a living. Number 10. Under Hitler, free market capitalism was absolutely hated. National Socialist theologian Gregor Strasser once stated the following: "We National Socialists are enemies, deadly enemies, of the present capitalist system with its exploitation of the economically weak, and we are resolved under all circumstances to destroy the system." And as I have written about previously, a lot of Barack Obama's strongest supporters are socialists and communists, and an increasing number of Americans are showing disdain for capitalism. In fact, some recent polls show that young adults in America actually have a more favorable view of socialism than they do of capitalism. Number 11. In Nazi Germany, the healthcare system was taken over by the government. The following is more eyewitness testimony from Kitty Worthman before Hitler. "We had very good medical care. Many American doctors trained at the University of Vienna. After Hitler, healthcare was socialized, free for everyone. Doctors were salaried by the government. The problem was, since it was free, the people were going to the doctors for everything. When the good doctor arrived at his office at 8 a.m., 40 people were already waiting, and, at the same time, the hospitals were full. If you needed elective surgery, you had to wait a year or two for your turn. There was no money for research as it was poured into socialized medicine. Research at the medical schools literally stopped, so the best doctors left Austria and emigrated to other countries. Of course, we all know what is going on in America today. The government spends nearly half of all healthcare dollars, and Obamacare is going to mean more government control over the healthcare system than ever before. Number 12. Under Adolf Hitler, abortion was made safe and legal in Germany. It turns out that Hitler was a huge fan of the founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. And as I wrote about recently, it was Sanger that once said the following: "The most merciful thing that a family does to one of its infant members is to kill it." Hitler echoed this sentiment when he wrote the following in Mein Kampf: "The demand that defective people be prevented from propagating equally defective offspring represents the most humane act of mankind." After the Nazis came to power in 1933, abortion was very quickly legalized. By 1935 there were approximately 500,000 abortions being performed in Germany every single year. Yes, Hitler very much encouraged Aryan women to have as many children as possible. But he also very much viewed abortion as a way to reduce undesirable populations. Unfortunately, something very similar is happening today. Abortion clinics are often located in the poor part of town, and a staggering 72% of Planned Parenthood customers have incomes that are either equal to or beneath 150% of the federal poverty level. Number 13. In Nazi Germany, killing the defective, the weak and the disabled was considered to be a good thing because it made the German people stronger. Unfortunately, many in America today have fully embraced the eugenics principles which were so dominant in Nazi Germany. A 3-year-old girl named Amelia was recently denied a kidney transplant because she is considered to be mentally retarded, and we all remember what happened to Terry Schiavo. Not only that, the editorial page editor of the Detroit News recently proposed putting contraceptives into the drinking water in Michigan because the state has become a breeding ground for poverty. This kind of sick thinking is rapidly spreading in America, and that is a very frightening thing. Number 14. In Nazi Germany, education was nationalized and God was kicked out of the schools. The following is more eyewitness testimony from Kitty Worthman. Our education was nationalized. I attended a very good public school. The population was predominantly Catholic, so we had religion in our schools. The day we elected Hitler, March 13, 1938, I walked into my schoolroom to find the crucifix replaced by Hitler picture hanging next to a Nazi flag. Our teacher, a very devout woman, stood up and told the class we would not pray or have religion anymore. Instead, we sang Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles, and had physical education. Unfortunately, the exact same thing is happening to the United States public schools. Number 15. Under Adolf Hitler, God was mocked and religion was pushed out of every corner of public life. Just check out the following information uncovered by author Bruce Walker. The Nazi tract Gott und Volk was distributed in 1941, and it describes the life cycle of German youth in the future, who would, with parties and gifts, the youth will be led painlessly from one faith to the other and will grow up without ever having heard of the Sermon on the Mount or the Golden Rule, to say nothing of the Ten Commandments. The education of the youth is to be confined primarily by the teacher, the officer, and the leaders of the party. The priests will die out. They have estranged the youth from the folk. Into their places will step the leaders. Not deputies of God, but anyway the best Germans. And how shall we train our children? Thus, as though they had never heard of Christianity. Once again, this parallels what we are seeing happen in America today. Last year, a high school student in Southern California was suspended for 2 days because he had private conversations with his classmates during which he discussed Christianity. He was also banned from bringing his Bible to school ever again. For many more examples of this phenomena, please see this article, 18 Examples of How Christians Are Being Specifically Targeted by Big Brother. Number 16. Adolf Hitler fully embraced the theory of evolution, and Darwinism provided the intellectual foundation for much of Nazism. At a Nazi party rally in Nuremberg in 1933, Hitler declared that higher race subjects to itself a lower race. A right which we see in nature and which can be regarded as the sole conceivable right. Hitler was obsessed with the survival of the fittest, and he took this theory to its logical extremes. The following is how one author put it: Hitler was influenced above all by the theories of the 19th century social Darwinist school, whose conception of man as biological material was bound up with impulses towards a planned society. He was convinced that the race was disintegrating, deteriorating through faulty breeding as a result of a liberally tinged promiscuity that was vitiating the nation's blood. And this led to the establishment of a catalog of positive curative measures: racial hygiene, eugenic choice of marriage partners, the breeding of human beings by the methods of selection on the one hand and extirpation on the other. But of course we have no problem with teaching this flawed theory to our children in the public schools of America today. Have not we learned anything from history? Number 17. Under Adolf Hitler, the state started taking over the job of child care. The following is more eyewitness testimony from Kitty Worthman. When the mothers had to go out into the workforce, the government immediately established child care centers. You could take your children ages 4 weeks to school age and leave them there around the clock, 7 days a week, under the total care of the government. The state raised a whole generation of children. There were no motherly women to take care of the children, just people highly trained in child psychology. Of course this is exactly what is happening in America today. Children are raised by daycare centers and public schools, and most parents spend very little time with their own children. Number 18. Inches Nazi Germany, it became fashionable to mock Christians and the Christian faith. The following is more from author Bruce Walker. By 1935, the virulent anti-Christian leader of the Hitler Youth, Baldur von Schirach, issued a regulation that prohibited any child from belonging simultaneously to a church youth group and the Hitler Youth, and gradually membership in the Hitler Youth became almost obligatory. Parents were told that their children would not get jobs in the civil service unless they belonged to the Hitler Youth, and employers were told not to hire children who did not belong to the Hitler Youth. Christian school children who did not belong to the Hitler Youth or its female counterpart were routinely beaten up by young Nazi thugs. Boys inducted into the Hitler Youth were required to explicitly reject Christianity by oaths like this: German blood and Christian baptismal water are completely incompatible. At Hitler Youth Center et al. Was the following prominent statement: the faith fanatics, who still today slide down on their knees with faces uplifted to heaven, waste their time in church-going and prayers, and have not yet understood that they are living on the earth and that therefore their task is of a thoroughly earthly kind. All we Hitler people can still only look with the greatest contempt on those young people who still run to their silly evangelical or Catholic churches in order to vent their quite superstitious religious feelings. Those that believe that the Nazis embraced Christianity are delusional. The following are direct quotes out of Hitler Youth training manuals: Christianity is a religion of slaves and fools. How did Christ die? Whining at the cross. The Ten Commandments represent the lowest instincts of man. Christianity is merely a cloak for Judaism. This is definitely where things are going in America today. Our television shows and our movies regularly mock Christians, and they are always portrayed as the bad guys. In addition, the name of Jesus is rapidly becoming a forbidden word. Some of the United States courts have even ruled that it is unconstitutional to use the name of Jesus Christ during any official government meeting. The following comes from a recent WorldNet Daily article, but the American Civil Liberties Union and Americans United for Separation of Church and State are standing by their victory in the United States Circuit Court decision that states even a solitary reference to Jesus Christ in invocations before the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners meetings could do violence to the pluralistic and inclusive values that are a defining feature of American public life. Number 19. Under Adolf Hitler, sexual promiscuity was actually encouraged. The following is more eyewitness testimony from Kitty Worthman. My mother was very unhappy. When the next term started, she took me out of public school and put me in a convent. I told her she could not do that, and she told me that someday when I grew up, I would be grateful. There was a very good curriculum, but hardly any fun, no sports, and no political indoctrination. I hated it at first but felt I could tolerate it. Every once in a while, on holidays, I went home. I would go back to my old friends and ask what was going on and what they were doing. Their loose lifestyle was very alarming to me. They lived without religion. By that time, unwed mothers were glorified for having a baby for Hitler. It seems strange to me that our society changed so suddenly. As time went along, I realized what a great deed my mother did so that I was not exposed to that kind of humanistic philosophy. Of course, the exact same thing is happening in America today. If you doubt that your tax dollars are going to promote sexual promiscuity, then I have a video for you to watch. It is a video from the American Life League, and you can view it right here. Do not let any children watch this video. It is done by a pro-life organization, but it is very graphic. I have posted a link to it because it is imperative that parents understand what is really going on out there. But please be warned that it is very, very graphic. Number 20. Once the Nazis took power, they rapidly implemented gun control legislation, and later on they took all of the guns away from the populace. Kitty Worthman remembers very well what happened in Austria under the Nazis. Next came gun registration. People were getting injured by guns. Hitler said that the real way to catch criminals, we still had a few, was by matching serial numbers on guns. Most citizens were law-abiding and dutifully marched to the police station to register their firearms. Not long afterwards, the police said that it was best for everyone to turn in their guns. The authorities already knew who had them, so it was futile not to comply voluntarily. Last year, more than 10 million guns were sold in the United States, but gun control legislation continues to become even more strict, and it is only a matter of time before the federal government tries to disarm the United States population completely. Number 21. Under the Nazis, large numbers of children were taken away from good families. The following is more from author Bruce Walker. Parents who resisted Nazi anti-Christian indoctrination too strongly simply had their children taken away from them. The Nazis even forbade parents to give their children Christian names and ordered babies instead to be given names like Dietrich, Otto or Siegfried. The home teaching of Christianity by parents in the home was forbidden. Not content with simply driving Christianity out of public schools, Himmler banned all confessing church seminaries and instruction in 1937, and he closed all private religious schools 2 years later. Does not this sound exactly like where America is headed? In many states, CPS Child Protective Services has become one of the most feared government agencies. All over the nation, thousands upon thousands of children have been removed from good homes because the parents were not raising them correctly. You can read about one particularly bad CPS horror story right here. Number 22. Under Adolf Hitler, society became very highly militarized. Of course, we are seeing the same thing in the United States right now. Sadly, this is even happening to our public schools. According to blogger Alexander Higgins, students in kindergarten and the first grade in the state of New Jersey are now required by law to participate in monthly anti-terrorism drills. The following is an excerpt from a letter that he recently received from the school where his child attends. Each month a school must conduct one fire drill and one security drill, which may be a lockdown, bomb threat, evacuation, active shooter, or shelter-in-place drill. All schools are now required by law to implement this procedure. This is the kind of thing that a sicko like Adolf Hitler would try to do, and it is not good for our children. Number 23. In Nazi Germany, the prisons were absolutely packed. Right now, the United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world by far and the largest total prison population on the entire globe by far. Even children are being arrested in alarming numbers. In a previous article, I described how one 12-year-old girl down in Texas was recently arrested for spraying herself with perfume and how police were recently sent out to collect an overdue library book from a 5-year-old girl in Massachusetts. Number 24. Under Adolf Hitler, there was basically no freedom of speech. In the United States today we are told that we still have freedom of speech, but that freedom is being chilled in thousands of different ways. For example, the FBI is now admittedly recording internet talk radio programs all over the United States. The following comes from a recent article by Mark Weaver of WMAL.com. If you call a radio talk show and get on the air, you might be recorded by the FBI. The FBI has awarded a $524,927 contract to a Virginia company to record as much radio news and talk programming as it can find on the internet. The FBI says it is not playing Big Brother by policing the airwaves, but rather seeking access to what airs as potential evidence. So please speak freely on talk radio. Just realize that the feds will be recording every single word. Number 25. Under Adolf Hitler, paranoia was standard operating procedure. In Nazi Germany, every citizen was a potential threat and everyone had to be constantly watched for suspicious activity. Of course, the exact same thing is happening in America today. Just about anything you do can get you labeled as a potential terrorist by the government. According to a new DHS report, the following are some of the beliefs and ideologies of potential terrorists: fiercely nationalistic as opposed to universal and international in orientation, anti-global, suspicious of centralized federal authority, reverent of individual liberty, believe in conspiracy theories, a belief that one personal and or national way of life is under attack, a belief in the need to be prepared for an attack either by participating in paramilitary preparations and training or survivalism, impose strict religious tenets or laws on society, fundamentalists. Insert religion into the political sphere. Those who seek to politicize religion supported political movements for autonomy, anti-abortion, anti-Catholic, anti-nuclear, and the definition of suspicious activity has become so broad in America that it pretty much covers 100% of us. In 2012, the following activities are considered to be suspicious by the FBI: shielding your computer screen from others, paying with cash, acting nervous, using multiple cell phones, requesting a specific room at a hotel, traveling with a large amount of luggage, refusing maid service at a hotel, staying in your room for too long, changing your appearance. In addition, that the United States government has decided that it would be a really good idea for all of us to spy on one another. The If You See Something, Say Something campaign looks like it could have been pulled right out of a Gestapo security handbook. But America is not supposed to be about spying on one another and reporting each other to the secret police. America is supposed to be about liberty and freedom. Recently, Fox News made a really bad decision by canceling Freedom Watch. Judge Andrew Napolitano was one of the few voices on television that was still standing up for individual liberty. As we think about how the Nazification of America has progressed, let the things that Judge Napolitano said on his last show echo in our minds. Video from that show is posted below.
If the Constitution was written to keep the government off the people's backs, why is the government all over us? Whatever happened to freedom? Understanding where we go from here should start with understanding how we got here. We are the free and independent people of the United States of America. We are free because those who preceded us fought a war against a person who was then the world's grandest king and who presided over what was then the world's grandest empire. The Founding Fathers risked, as they like to tell us, their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors for the freedom and independence they won and we have inherited. But they were not saints. And initially, their cause was not popular. From the records available today, the people who measure historical trends have concluded that in 1776, only about 1/3 of Americans supported the revolution. About 1/3 of Americans opposed it. And about 1/3 of them didn't care. When I first looked at these numbers, I thought, in 1776, this was the grandest fight for the greatest amount of freedom for the most people at any point in history. So who could possibly oppose it? And who in their right mind could not care? Fast forward to today and ask, who could possibly support a government that regulates everything from the strength of the water pressure in your shower to the size of the toilet bowl in your home to the thickness of the leather in your shoes? Who could want a government that punishes people for speech, that lets its own agents write their own search warrants, that fights wars just to keep the military-industrial complex busy, that debases all you own by printing worthless money and putting it into the stream of commerce, that gives away more than half the tax dollars it collects, and that, despite express provisions in the Constitution to the contrary, permits the president to lock up whoever he wants and to throw away the key? Perhaps the colonists who didn't care if they freely chose their government or were cared for by a benevolent tyrant had an odd way of knowing what was coming. Perhaps those who opposed the revolution were afraid to take on the king, to challenge authority, and to risk their comfortable lives for the unknown. Well, we all know what happened. A relatively small part of the population pushed the culture and society toward freedom. And the freedoms that they chose were pure. I mean, after we won the revolution and wrote the Constitution, the new government and the political class assured all Americans that they could think as they wished and say what they thought and publish what they said, that they could associate or not associate with anyone. They could worship as they chose or choose not to worship. They could defend themselves with guns even against tyrants. That troops would never enter their homes, that only neutral judges would issue search warrants, and that the government could not take their lives, their freedom, or their property without a trial, at which their fault would be proven in front of a neutral jury. All this was guaranteed to the first generation of Americans and to their posterity. That would be us, because much of it had been denied them by the king and the parliament, and because Americans came to believe, even the 1/3 that were afraid and the 1/3 that didn't care, that these rights are ours by virtue of our humanity. Whether you believe that we are the highest order of natural selection, or whether you believe, as I do, that we were created by God in his image and likeness, you know in your heart that these natural yearnings, as St. Thomas Aquinas and Thomas Jefferson called them, are our natural rights, are a part of our humanity, and cannot long be denied us. And yet, they have been denied. The same Founding Fathers who wrote that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, in fact, enacted the Alien and Sedition Acts, which punished speech that was critical of them, critical of the government. This happened because people were afraid to challenge the tyranny of the majority. America, the greatest losses to our freedom have come not from someone attacking us, but from the government ignoring the Constitution and the majority letting them get away with it. The worst amendments to the Constitution were not those ratified by the states, but rather were amendments by consensus, where all three branches of government agreed to look the other way. When good people do nothing, bad things happen. So what shall we do? We should challenge authority, no matter who is in charge. We should challenge the majority whenever it curtails anybody's freedom. We should side with freedom no matter what the government says. We should vote out of office those who push the government outside the Constitution, no matter what earmarks they just brought home. And we should make the government afraid of us. Afraid of us. Because as Jefferson reminded us, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there is liberty. From New York, defending freedom, everybody's freedom whenever I can. So long, America.